Trains and U.S. presidents. Together, they are integral parts of the fabric of America and forever intertwined in our national consciousness. Long before Air Force One, presidents utilized train travel, forging an enduring symbol of power and significantly extending the reach of their office. Older generations of Americans were inspired by vivid daily newspaper images of Teddy Roosevelt riding the rails and making historic campaign stops all across small towns of America. Or FDR sitting beside his Scottish Terrier Fala in a luxury rail car, and Harry Truman's famous 31,000-mile American Whistle Stop tour of 1948. Presidents Richard Nixon, Ronald Reagan, Bill Clinton, and Jimmy Carter also campaigned by rail in order to get closer to voters and their constituents and to create an air of nostalgia in a rapidly modernizing world. Even in our modern transportation age, contemporary presidents, including Barack Obama, delivered speeches from a red, white, and blue rail car to emphasize their connection to everyday Americans. Presidential trains have also borne the burden of delivering the last remains of many a chief executive to his final resting place.
Slowly the train backs into Union Station.
Then, on Friday, November 30th, 2018, the nation received word that President George Herbert Walker Bush, who had been ill, had passed away.
We have some very sad breaking news. George Herbert Walker Bush, the 41st President of the United States, has died at the age of 94.
On that day, a dedicated team from Union Pacific activated the long-planned and thought-out process to ready its special funeral train that had been under wraps for years. Our 41st president, George Herbert Walker Bush, following in the grand American tradition, had requested that his remains be delivered to his final resting place by train. Abraham Lincoln, Ulysses S. Grant, FDR, Dwight D. Eisenhower, among others, were all laid to rest after a final journey by rail. The family turned to Union Pacific Railroad, which had this one-of-a-kind locomotive named George Bush 4141. This utterly unique engine pulled the president's funeral train, his family and friends on his last epic journey home.
Yeah, we started this project 10 years ago. It was quite awe-inspiring when they came to us, and then quite a daunting task to take it on and all the things that have to happen. It's been a wonderful experience, although quite overwhelming at times. It goes back to the relationship the Bush family and the Union Pacific has had over the years. We've done several different events at the Bush Library, so we've had a long history with the Bush family, and we are proud that we can be a part of this and feel honored. Our crew members, our employees really has a sense of pride about being able to be a part of this historical event. It's bittersweet. We mourn our president, but this goes right into the values of Union Pacific and what we do, and we're ecstatic about it.
Since the 19th century, this time-honored presidential ritual has afforded citizens from coast to coast the unique, typically once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to pay their last respects in person to a fallen commander-in-chief.
He just formed a bond with Union Pacific because he knew our history, like our employees know our history, and our role in building America. We take immense pride in that, and we are so thankful and humbled to be able to honor President Bush, who also shared that history with us. He was in World War II, of course, and almost all of the military who traveled to or from the front traveled by train. So that was an emotional connection for so many World War II veterans to know that they were leaving their home and they were coming to their home by train.
Presidential funeral train processions began with the death of Abraham Lincoln in 1865. Ironically, President Lincoln, who played an important role in the founding of Union Pacific, never had the pleasure of a train ride during his lifetime, since locomotives were still so new.
When I first came to work for the railroad about 20 years ago, one of the things that I noticed was this remarkable pride in our railroad history. We have families who are fifth-generation railroaders. We were founded by President Abraham Lincoln. Now, he never got the chance to ride on the Union Pacific, even though he created our company. But since then, we have had presidents travel on our rails for all of our history.
Many historians agree that Lincoln's funeral train is the most memorable in American history. Yet another notable funeral train ride swept up in American tragedy took place in the tumultuous summer of 1968. It was then that the remains of Senator Robert F. Kennedy, felled by an assassin's bullet during a presidential campaign, crossed the country. Thousands of citizen mourners bid him a tearful farewell along the route from Los Angeles to RFK's burial place at Arlington National Cemetery in Virginia.
When you're an American company that was created by Abraham Lincoln's pen, patriotism and presidents run deep. The red, white, and blue of our shield obviously is key. And so in 2005, when President Bush asked us to create an exhibit for a transportation exhibit they were having at the library, they asked us, can we have a train to take the president to his final resting place? That is just so ripe with history. You go back in presidents from Lincoln to Garfield to McKinley, Eisenhower. Bobby Kennedy wasn't a president, but I remember that myself. It's one of those things, it's just a great opportunity for all sorts of people from all sorts of slots in life to pay their final respects to a great man. And Union Pacific is proud to play a role in this event.
The last presidential funeral train procession had taken place in 1969 to honor President Eisenhower, affectionately referred to as Ike, a hero on the battlefield, courageous in the White House, and whose Union Pacific train made the trip from Washington, D.C. to his home in Abilene, Kansas.
Of course, every president makes their own arrangements, tells their staff what they want, and so President Bush has been a railroad fan all of his life, and he knew from the outset that he wanted to have a train involved.
Throughout that process, you won't see all the behind the scenes or all the extra work that's being done by these fine special agents in the background. An extreme level high of patriotism. We want to get it right. We want to be a part of this. This is a historic event. We want to ensure that it's done respectful, but we want it done at the wishes of the Bush family. This is what they wanted. We fully support that, and we think we've got a phenomenal opportunity to demonstrate what this company provides.
On Thursday, December 6, 2018, the Union Pacific presidential funeral train carrying the flag-draped casket of the 41st President of the United States, George Bush, departed from the city of Spring, Texas, to his final resting place on the campus of Texas A&M University in College Station. The 70-mile route, televised, shared on social media, and streamed online, brought this country together to mourn and pay homage to one of the nation's most widely admired leaders.
He knew that by taking a train, all of those wonderful communities that meant so much to him and Barbara would be able to experience it. Standing right next to the tracks to be able to wave goodbye and wave their American flags and honor the president in a way that's meaningful to them. Small communities that really are deeply emotional about their president, and so their opportunity to come out and honor him will be a great historical moment for grandparents and grandkids, everybody in the family.
When we return, an unprecedented look at the remarkable 4141 event. Stories told by Union Pacific men and women for whom the funeral train was the assignment of a lifetime. Prior to modern air travel and the interstate system, the railroad was the practical way to travel long distances. For the century spanning 1840 to 1940, if a president needed to travel in America, he did so by train. Our 41st President of the United States was no stranger to train travel. As a young man, George Herbert Walker Bush often rode the rails with his family in sleeper cars on extended journeys, which was common in the era. In fact, Bush's adopted hometown of Houston, Texas, is a vital railroad transportation hub.
Spending so much of my time in Houston here over the last 20 years, It's incredible, not only his commitment to this country, but to the city of Houston. You think of a president and how presidential he was, but getting to meet him, he's a person, he's a family guy. You see him at Minute Maid Park in Houston at baseball games.
In his bid for re-election in 1992, George Bush opted to campaign by rail, touring the Southeast and Midwest in a train dubbed Spirit of America. In 2005, Bush 4141 was commissioned to honor the 41st president.
It's been a privilege getting ready for this. We couldn't ask for better operation planning with the group that's been involved in this over the years. So we were ready to go. I get a little choked up today thinking about what's to come. You watch the news and the things that are going on around this city right now, and it makes you feel pretty proud just to be an American and be a part of such a big deal.
The stakes couldn't be higher for Union Pacific, for security, for the Bush family and everyone involved.
The towns that we're going through, we're already seeing a lot of activity around those towns, a lot of questions about when and where the train's going to be going through. So the state of Texas can say goodbye to their president, and our employees to say goodbye to their president also.
We've been planning this for so many years, and to be able to actually be a part of the homegoing for such an awesome man that's so big in the city of Houston. Our company is so excited to be a part of what's going on here, to get to honor a man like this, a family like this that's been so close to the Union Pacific for so long, that's been so good to us. I mean, we're going to create a very respectful, professional atmosphere, but obviously the enthusiasm is out the roof with the agents that are assigned here, the train crews, everybody involved.
4141 is among the rare Union Pacific trains with a color scheme that does not retain the company's traditional gray and armor yellow format.
At Union Pacific, we build America. We have flags on the sides of our locomotives. Nothing says America, an American iconic company like Union Pacific. We all know that President Bush loved trains, and for all of us who work at Union Pacific, we all love trains, so what a great combination.
With a white body, presidential seal, and long vertical blue bars, the Bush 4141 engine distinctly resembles Air Force One, the Commander-in-Chief's signature jet airplane. George Bush was humorously quoted as saying, "If I had one of these as president, I might have left Air Force One behind." During the Bush 4141 unveiling in 2005, the president nostalgically reminisced to ABC News, saying, "We rode on the railroads all the time, and I've never forgotten it." When President Bush first saw the 4141 train, his passion for train travel could not be contained.
He loved them. He campaigned on them. He used them a lot when his presidential library first opened.
Immediately, he asked Union Pacific if he could take the controls of the mighty 4141. Of course, his request was granted after he was trained by the Union Pacific staff.
I can recall the dedication of his library when the 4141 was commissioned, and he actually got the opportunity to operate his locomotive on the Navasota sub. In fact, we had a difficult time getting him off the locomotive. We had trains stopped all around the subdivision so that he could continue to enjoy his gift from Union Pacific.
For the 4141 funeral train, a special viewing car was outfitted with a custom glass so that members of the public lined up along the route could take one more glimpse of the former head of state. Union Pacific supervisors and workers calibrated each and every movement of the 4141 train down to the most minute detail.
Well, the train itself is going to be about 5,000 tons, and we have to go and spot it up at College Station within about a half an inch of where that platform has to be, which is substantially different than what we normally do on a regular basis. You know, we have leeway in most cases of 1 or 2 feet, and today we have a half an inch. So it's imperative that we get it done right. The world will be watching. But I got the right team. I have nothing but the utmost confidence in the folks that are doing this tomorrow, and I'm just glad to be a part of it.
Up next, we'll examine the emotional connections that presidents forge with their fellow Americans and why the funeral train is a special way to pay our respect. Modern American presidents continue in public service long after leaving the White House. Jimmy Carter, Bill Clinton, George W. Bush, and Barack Obama remained highly visible after their time in office ended through speeches, TV appearances, national and international conferences, and numerous civic events. Our presidents belong to us, regardless of their political affiliation, and that spirit carried over to many of the Union Pacific employees involved in 4141.
President and Mrs. Bush are people who I admire. They carried themselves throughout their lives in a very unique and humble way. I was in middle school when they asked for volunteers to go and make phone calls on behalf of candidate George Bush and Dan Quayle. I made my mom take me to their call center where these volunteers would come twice a week. And so I would go, and I was given a section of the phone book, and I would call people. And when President Bush won, I'll never forget how special I felt when I received an invitation to the inauguration in Washington, D.C. Being a part of his final journey from Spring to College Station takes me back to that time, and I feel very special and like I'm part of something very, very big.
At the National Cathedral, George Bush was honored with moving eulogies from family members, his political contemporaries, and his son, former President George W. Bush.
He was a genuinely optimistic man, and that optimism guided his children and made each of us believe that anything was possible.
Approximately 20% of Union Pacific employees are veterans of American Armed Services. For them, participating in the funeral of a former commander-in-chief was a matter of duty and a singular honor.
For me, it's being prior Navy man, it's a very honorable thing for me to do. I think it's going to be something very special. It's a brotherhood, and it's something that, for me, it hits home for me. I want to take care of a fellow Navy man and a fellow shipmate, and that's what I'm going to do, take care of him.
I served under President Bush, so it's a real honor to get to carry him to his final resting place. To get to operate his locomotive and to be a part of this is just a real honor.
The pride that all the Union Pacific employees experienced, spanning corporate leadership to the conductors to the logistical workers, was overwhelming. It's safe to say that for the Union Pacific team members assigned to the Bush 4141 funeral train, the project transcended work. It became personal, and it's something they will never forget.
To me, it's a great honor to be part of this. This is a big historic thing happening, and so it's been a lot of years, and we worked on it for so hard, for so long, for so many years, that everything has come into place now that what we've put together, what we worked so hard for.
When we return, a reflection on the triumphant final journey for President George Bush aboard Union Pacific engine number 4141. Thousands of Americans waved and cheered along the 70-mile engine number 4141 route as the locomotive pulling the nation's first funeral train in nearly a half-century made its way to College Station, Texas. Students held signs with affectionate messages, and scores of onlookers took photos which they shared on social media.
When you see the different stories on TV or Facebook or just being around, seeing everyone a part of this, you start thinking about what this means, how really historic this one trip is tomorrow, what it means to the country, the Bush family. Prayers, hearts go out to them during this time, of course. And what it means to the Union Pacific of being that railroad that gets to do this and participate with the Bush family and the country.
Many veterans along the trail reminisced about their own service and the military career of George Herbert Walker Bush in a spirit of kinship.
I met him, talked to him for 45 minutes, and when he found out I was in the Navy, it was like a whole new conversation because we connected as Navy men. Down to earth. It's like me and him had been shipmates for life.
Our core values are integrity first, service before self, and excellence in all we do. That second core value, service before self, really resonates with what George H.W. Bush did, where he helped a lot of the community and the nation.
Upon 4141's arrival in College Station, the military band proudly performed Hail to the Chief and the Texas A&M anthem, Aggie War Hymn.
It's complicated. There's a lot of moving parts. There's two different sites. There's platforms at each site. We had some custom made, 2 of them are custom made at each site, and 1 we stick built when we arrive each site. So a lot of dimensions need to be spot on the money, so when the train pulls in, the doors align with the platforms.
I try and view it as just another train trip to try and keep it all in perspective so that everything goes the way we're used to having things go. But obviously from a historical standpoint, this is probably the most important trip that the Heritage Fleet's ever done. We've got the eyes of the world on us right now, so that's a little overwhelming maybe, but I'm not sure any other Class 1 railroad could pull off an event like this.
To honor the former World War II Navy pilot, the Navy staged a dramatic and solemn 21-strike fighter flyover, followed by a 21-gun cannon salute.
In my opinion, there is no comparison to this event. It's so historic, so important. The eyes of the world are upon us, and we will perform.
It's an honor to be a part of it and to have that responsibility. A great president, great man, been a great representative of our country.
To many weary Americans to whom national affairs of state seem less and less special, somehow the George Bush funeral and historic 4141 journey captured their attention.
I can't help but think about how this is really a people story. It's a story about all of us working together. It's, obviously the locomotive is the star. President Bush is what is unifying us all.
Far removed from the pomp and pageantry of Washington, the 4141 Union Pacific George Bush train served as a tangible connection between the people and their president.
Here, on the evening before President Bush's final journey, we saw a rainbow. And you couldn't help but feel and think that God is smiling at us. We can move forward with President Bush's spirit, that spirit of commonality, of trust, and working together to ensure that we do everything we can to bring our country up.
When the unfortunate news came in of George Herbert Walker Bush passing, we immediately went into motion. There's 42,000 UP employees from the CEO on down that are working to make sure this event goes as planned. I mean, you take a company with a long history, has a Building America as its motto, and you take that and you take the fact that 20% of our workforce is military, you got a very patriotic and motivated bunch. And you give them the assignment, a very unique and special assignment of this final funeral train for President Herbert Walker Bush 41. You don't need much motivation. These people know it's important. They know the eyes of the world are upon us. It's been years in the planning, and now it's time to execute.
I do think that you go to heaven, there is a heaven, and I don't fear it, though. When I was a little guy, I'd fear death. I'd worried about it, be scared. Not anymore.